day, dude, I feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas, and the ladies, welcome back to another episode of The Farm. We're sitting down with my good friend, Dawn. Dawn, we got to talk so much before we even hit the record button. I was like scrambling. I was like, as you were speaking, I'm like, oh my God, I got to hit the record. We got to record this. We got to record this. I think so much, even when you were at our last retreat, in the middle of the retreat, we're posting our marketing clips and all the stuff. I got Lindsay Leftwich texting me like, oh my God, you got Dawn there. I love her so much, all the things. And again, all good people and a great community. And we were just talking about that, about how lately God's been putting this community, on my heart. And we talk about it so much about how with players, we want to unlock them and we want to help them, remove the things that are holding them back from, their biggest, what they're capable of. Well, I feel the same way about coaches. And I think along the way, some coaches is when they're first getting started and they're making that transition into the coaching world. But then also too, I think that there's this other community, right, where they started to walk the route, right? And along the way, somewhere they got stuck. And you're somebody, again, inside of our community, right, where I know that, again, you well, not only the experience you've had in all the different places and different areas of the game that you've also worked, but also too, I think just your energy, authenticity, like all these other things, I think could really help a lot of these coaches. And so I wanted to jump on and have a conversation with you. But before we get going with that longer intro here, Dawn, I just wanted to, why don't you tell the people who you are, what you do, and kind of how we met, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, my name is Dawn Castaneda. I'm from SoCal. I played ball locally. I went to Azusa Pacific, smaller school. And then right after college, I graduated, went to a high school, started coaching right away. And since then, I've been in the game quite a long time. And then, let's see, I now opened up my own business, been doing lessons over 20 years. I started coaching travel ball. I coach a Batbusters team out of SoCal as well, Batbusters Lara. So we're doing that 7 days a week during the fall, 7 days a week during the summer. Yes, we're in it.
Love it. Yeah, she's deep in it. Yeah, and I think some of the things that we were talking about just even recently too as well, and I think you could speak specifically to this community. Me and you were getting into that, like, oh man, I'm doing a bunch of lessons, and then now, taking that plunge of, okay, now I'm doing my own thing with my own, facility, have all these things. And we were just talking about, and it kind of walked into the spider web there of, man, I was telling you, I was like, when I made that plunge and really started making that push too, as well, as it's been some of the biggest self-awareness and growth and all these things for me personally. And there's so much of that I don't think that happens unless you actually are sitting in some of those responsibilities and those things as well. Yeah, and I know you want to open that up a little bit about how that's been for you.
So had been in a facility for, gosh, I would say 15 years. And I would say two different facilities. One was a warehouse, just a lighting warehouse with a buddy of mine. And then when he moved into a smaller facility, I moved into a bigger facility with, it was all sports, where they had the hitting, the fielding, the agility, the strength and conditioning. And I did that for about 8 years, and COVID hit. Yeah. So when COVID hit is when I moved into a smaller facility, try to get through it, and it just didn't work. And so I moved out to a park, just like everybody else, right? We needed open space. And at that time, my dad had a massive heart attack. So I stopped giving lessons because it was too difficult. And then I actually had a good friend of mine reached out and said, girl, what are you doing? You need to get it back out here. And I said, well, I don't have a park. It's so rough. It's so difficult. And she actually opened up her home for me. Wow. And since then, yeah, I was super thankful. And it was just, I hadn't given her daughter lessons for a while. And, it happens where the kids go to now travel teams and they have to hit with their travel coach. Yeah. And so it was amazing. And I did that for a little bit. and then probably about a year and a half. And it was difficult. And it was kind of like living out of my car, giving lessons with all my equipment.
Yeah.
And I was commuting about an hour and a half because I was teaching at a high school in Orange County, and through traffic. So we made it work. Yeah, we made it work. And I just kept pushing through. And before I knew it, then other people had opened up their homes because they had built batting cages in their backyard.
Yeah.
And so I started going to a couple different cities.
Because nobody wanted to deal with the traffic, Dawn. You know, so
Except Dawn.
Yeah.
Except me. Yeah. So and mind you, I had a high clientele prior to COVID, and then it just kind of plummeted because of COVID, and then not having space, you know, and I felt bad because I didn't have a home. And thankful for her and her family opening that up. It opened up just huge opportunities in surrounding cities. And then finally, I had a team that reached out and said, you know, we got a facility. We're only here certain days out of the week. Here's a key. You can come in and work. And it was great. Once again, still not in my vision what I wanted to do to level up, right? So anyhow, 2 years ago, I finally got enough courage and said, I'm tired of moving around. I'm tired of not having a set place. I'm tired of not being able to expand, you know? And so 2 years ago, I opened up my own place, and I've been able to do, you know, open up opportunities for the girls, you know, going more into the direction of where I believe the game is going, the data, as much as we may not like it. You know, I'm a lot older. We didn't have all these videos where you get a diagram and, you know, draw lines on. We took a cardboard paper or construction paper and covered this half, covered that half, you know, and just really had to visualize it. And video recording wasn't a thing because we didn't have cell phones like the kids do nowadays. So I would use a sliding glass door at home and just every day take some swings because we didn't have a cage. So just try to figure it out. And so in the last 2 years, it's been challenging for sure, but I would do it again because I've been able to accomplish some of the things that, for me, what I wanted to give back to the kids in the community. And yeah, I mean, learning how to change a light switch, cut a drywall, patch drywall, you know, but it comes with the territory. And I'm, you know, I want the kids to do hard things. And sometimes I need to step out of my area and be uncomfortable and see what's on the other side of fear. So
no, I love that. Thanks so much for sharing the story. I think there's so many people that can probably too that have connected with that. One, either they've already done that at one point, or two, looking into it and give them a real perspective of, when you step in and sit in that one seat and all those other things, it's like, okay, right? Like you take the plunge, and especially too, you're doing it. You know, I lived out in Southern California for about 2 years at one point too, as well. When I was the director of hitting at 108 back then, and the same thing too. Our basically as we're running these multiple facilities, just like how expensive everything was, and you know all the things. There's a lot of that, and then also too, then when you start having employees, and then again, if you can go the salaried route or you can go the 1099s, and then you're doing all these things, and also stepping into this whole nother world. That previously before it's so much different when you're just by yourself. And again, I think that's another thing too, as well. I'm an advocate. I think we talked about this too, a little bit more when you were here, is like, I'm a big advocate too of I think society wise, we have this like hierarchy where it's like, okay, I'm doing my own lessons. Now I have my own building. And so like this place is like better than this place, or et cetera. Right. And I think that in large, I really think that God has all called us on different missions, and also too, He's put different things on our heart. And some people would be so much happier if they just worked for somebody, and some people would be so much happier, right, if they did have their own. And maybe they do. Like me, for example, I worked in corporate America. I didn't like the box of, hey, we know what we need to do. This is like, here's this hit list, go do these things. Like I'm very creative. I want to go and explore. I want to do all these other things. So in a lot of ways, being on my own and running my own places is really helpful for me, and it's really helped me grow. But also too, on the other side of that, right, it's required a lot of other skills, right, that you think A lot of people think when they own their business, they'll just get to do what they want to do all the time. They'll get to, all these things all so carefree. I can't wait for me to run my own place. And it's like, no, you're still governed by, like, I still got bills. I still got people that needed money from me or needing things. And also, honestly, my bills are a lot bigger, right? Because I have all those things going on, right? So the problem solving from there. And then also too, I think, man, there's so much, and we of course, right, we always want to jump past this. It doesn't mean if you're older or you're younger, like, we want to really jump past the place of, mentorship and just getting around people that have been in places where I've been. And I think recently, the other day, I listened to you know who Eric Cressy is? I don't know if you know. Yeah. Okay. So Eric Cressy, he does these little 10-minute podcasts. I've been doing a little bit more of those lately too, just like little subjects you want to open up a little bit more, but it's not an hour-long podcast, like a 10-minute podcast. And one of those podcasts, he was talking about, in mentorship, and like, we try to do these things from afar, right? We want to, okay, yeah, you know what? I watch what they do on social media, I try to do it remotely, etc. But he's like, man, like in an old fashioned, like in-person mentorship, where you get to see how they handle difficulty, how they handle setbacks, how they work their way around that problem, like, or the stresses of, an athlete's going up and down and what's going on with their performance, and emotionally what's happening with them, and being with them along that journey, and seeing a coach, or again, like a business owner or something, navigate certain seasons, and how much you can learn from some of that in person. And I was thinking about the same thing too, is like, that's the times also in my life that I've learned the most, that I grew the most, is learning from how somebody else handled it, right? And watching it and walking side by side and seeing, what the difficult things, without it all being on me. Like, wow.
Exactly.
Like, so it's somebody else's money, it's somebody else's mistakes. And even when they're my mistakes, they're really their mistakes because they own the business, right? So it's like, you get to have that little buffer, right? But when it's you, right, there is no buffer. Everybody's mistakes are your mistakes. Again, paying payroll is nobody else's, job. It's your job. And it's, I think that, with that, there's so much growth from there. And I wanted to point that out too, as well, is along that process. And one of the reasons I wanted us to, have this conversation too, is I know that along this whole way, you've continued through all of these different journeys, and I guess the journey that has gone so many different directions, and you've gotten to try and taste so many different ice creams, as I like to call it, right? And figure out what's your lane and where you fit and what season you're currently in. One consistent that I've heard throughout your story, and also from us talking over and over again, is your continued desire to, like, learn, grow, evolve, all those things, and not just get stuck along the way. And what can you kind of open that up, like why that's so important to you, and like why you feel like that's been something that's been so consistent, like kind of throughout your journey?
So for me, I think, the thing is, we all get a chance to learn, right? And we can grow as we go, and I think it's huge. I think it's important, the way that I see it too, is like nowadays, and this was maybe 7 years ago, pre-COVID, I realized once I got back into the high school scene, I said, these kids, they're all with iPhones, iPads, computer, and so one of those things was like, if I clip videos and I send it to them, if I can make it into a TikTok, they'll watch it,
Yeah.
and so it's like, being more visual with them is like a big thing, because they see it and it makes more sense to them. Back when I grew up, it was, and I'm not that old, but I'm saying, like, we had to be creative with it, like as far as like looking in the, watching video and diagramming it all, where now I can open an app and just draw it in there,
Yeah.
So I think that, I don't claim to know everything. I want to keep learning. I want to keep growing. I've been doing it for a long time. I don't, what works for one doesn't work for the other. So if I can meet with a lot of people and figure out what they're doing and apply it to me, and it might work with one kid, it might not work with another. And so I just, and going to your seminar or your retreat, it was big for me, because ever since I was in college, I love biomechanics and I love learning how the body works. I mean, it's an everyday deal as much as it is in the cage, and so like knowing how your body functions and how to and what to, it's always been a thing for me.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, and I think that, obviously within that, I was thinking about that the other day, about how, a lot of getaways or retreats or events or things like that, right? Like they are maybe 1 or 2 days or something like that. But this is, you know, it's a 4-day thing. It's something you got to cut out of your schedule. Like, you know, you definitely got to plan for it. But, you know, I think along with that, like what for you, like, why is that something that you felt like you needed the priority, the prioritize, and like, why did you want to come? And I know you touched on the biomechanics piece, but what was that like, you know, for you? Like, what did you think it was going to be maybe kind of coming into it compared to also when you were here and what you experienced too as well?
Okay, so I know going into it, it was just the excitement of how the body works. I want to know more. I want to know how the science side applies to softball, how it applies to the swing. That's what I want to know. I know in my body, because of growing up, I knew what I was supposed to feel, and I try to communicate that to the kids. But I also knew, how can I get them to feel that with a constraint to get that what I need from them. So, you know, a lot of times and maybe in building the business, right, opening up my own place, it was starting to pull, that being in the driver's seat was starting to pull me away from that, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, sit back, stay back, you know, wait, not stay back. I need you to get to the middle, but they're confused, you know? And so it's like, even one thing is like the bands, you know, just putting the bands, I'm like, look, this is all I need you to feel. Okay, let's just do like 10 of them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like the next video, it's like, boom, there it is. So it's like, you know, it helped clarify things, not only for me, but also to be able to give it to them, because ultimately, yeah, some of us can think about it and do it. I mean, I know I wasn't, I had to feel it. And if I can feel it, repeat it. And so being able to go to that, it helps simplify some things and be able to communicate it to the kids in a way of, okay, I'm going to show you, I'm going to let you feel it, and then let's see what we can do from there.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit it right on the nose too when you're talking about on the piece of, you know, I think it was real now that obviously I've attended every retreat, Dawn, if you didn't know, every retreat. So when I get to experience, you know, each retreats has been unique to this point, and because there's different coaches, right? Every time you come in, there's a different group of coaches, and like on, you know, your one specifically, you know, you had this, you know, again, with having Micah and RJ and also too, even Rick, with, you know, again, he went back, he's with the Orioles now, you know, too as well, right? So like pro organizations there and represented, and what they've experienced along their route too. I think it's so unique when you get a certain group of individuals together too, and like how you guys all kind of mesh and like what you bring to it differently in a different perspective. I think that was really unique too. I mean, we specifically inside the retreat, I know we gotten to have this like community time, right? Where everybody kind of, you know, again, if that's an hour before we start and we're all chatting before everything gets going, there's, you know, lunchtime, or, you know, obviously when we're shadowing, all those things, we you know, we got to spend some time together and things with that too. What would you say, like with that, right? If you could explain maybe just like what it felt like too, when you were there, and, you know, if someone, you know, obviously hasn't been to the event, what would you say, like what that experience feels like, what the communication was like, what all those things for you, like why was it so, give them a sense of what that would be like.
Being able to like communicate, right? Going in there, talking to RJ, talking to Micah, talking to Nikki, talking to Rick, and a few of the other guys. It was just really neat to see and just have like a common ground, right? We're all there to learn something more about, you know, the biomechanics and a little bit deeper than that. And being able to see how they're applying things and what they're doing. And hey, I'm struggling with some of these issues owning my own business, or in lessons, this is what I'm struggling with. What is some feedback? So it's just like networking, you know, and being able to hear it from the other side of whatever questions you might need. I think that's a huge thing. I think networking, getting to know people and stepping outside of your community. I mean, I think the really cool experience, I like the beginning, I like the lunchtime, I like the after, but really cool is being able to be in that Airbnb and all just having conversations. You know, that was a really, really cool experience. Wake up in the morning, we're all having coffee and sharing our own stories, you know, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say that was also something unique to your guys' as well, right? As we offered housing and lodging for the first time, right? And so you guys all getting to go together, like you said, right? It was like we knew we were thinking about that. We put that together. I'm like, man, that adds a different dynamic to it, right? Which is kind of like the retreat part, right? Where it's like, again, I think it actually brought it more home, where not everybody's just scattered, staying where they're staying, and everybody's showing up at the event, but like, again, a large base of you guys were all staying together, and so. That builds a whole nother dynamic to it, and I'm sure plenty of funny stories in the same same route too as well. So
Exactly.
yeah. So I think that was cool.
It was a good time for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I know that some of the things too as well. I mean, I want to speak to this part too. Is like there's. Like I said, we talked about that community of coaches that, there's certain things that may be holding them back, personally. And I know one of those things for a lot of people is one like fear of the unknown, which I don't know about you, Dawn, but I still have that all the time. All right. And also too, right. I think it's more, and I think this is a word that is not used nowadays. And it's almost kind of like almost too cliche, but I really think it's important. And I see this a lot. And you, and also too, I think for these coaches to understand this part is it's the word courage. It's the word courage. It's something that I think in today's day and age is like a word that's not used very often. And it's more associated with the youth, but also too, I think it's the same way too as us, right? It's like I was just saying is there's so much, right? When you're stepping into things you don't know, or again, spaces you've never been, or again, coaching jobs, and you have to take that job in another state, or, maybe I'm jumping to this new team, or I'm jumping into this new next step in my journey. And there's so many people that are held back from going to that new place because of that fear of the unknown. But also too, I know like I see it in you too, in the same way that I've had, is a lot of times it's seeing that, it's still feeling that fear. Cause I've had people say that it's like, Joe, you're just like fearless. You'll just go and try it. You'll do all the X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no, hey, I feel it just like you feel it. I'm just as intimidated. I'm just as all those things. But at the end of the day, I think it's that word of like, I see it and I still go forward with that too. Right. So what would you say that's like for you? And like, what have you kind of learned? How have you cultivated that a little bit more, throughout your journey?
I think the biggest thing is as I've gotten older, yes, it's more fear. I know when I was younger and it was, I want to try it. What's the worst that's going to happen? I want to try it. Let's just see. I don't know what's on the other side of that fear, and now that it's like being an adult, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, have my own warehouse. It's scary to like, I think about it. And then, I think you said something at the retreat. It was almost like, okay, so what? Let's figure it out. Like, okay. So, and I struggle with that. I wish it was that easy, but on the inside, it's like, I'm nervous, but I want to try it. I want to know. I want to see what's on the other side. I want to go to this retreat and see what I can get out of it. I want to go to another retreat and see what I get out of that. Yeah. And, I think that there's only one way to find out, and that's try it.
Yeah, no. And I had somebody tell me this one time is the difference between like one-way and two-way doors. There's certain doors when you walk through, there's no coming back, right? And there's other doors, there's plenty. And majority of the doors that we're so afraid of walking through the door, it's a two-way door. I can go in the room and I can come back, right? And so I think there's so many things like, you know what? There is going to be decisions in your life where if I go through that door, you can't walk back through the other way. But at the same time, majority of your decisions that you're making or the things you want to go try are two-way doors that appear like one-way doors. They feel like, oh no, if I do this, there's no, and it's like, but if you actually think about it, it'd be like, okay, well, like, if it doesn't work, then we'll do this. Or also too, I think it's a deeper, for me, I kind of relate more to, we hear the story all the time too. And again, this, me and my faith, Dawn, I'm bringing Bible story in here, but I think about it, like, how did like David have courage and like David and Goliath, right? Like, okay, how does everybody like the top, the guy that's won the most wars in that time frame is deadly afraid of fighting Goliath, right? Like he's the king, he's all these other things, right? And then you have all the soldiers, all these soldiers are like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm like, there's no, and then here comes David, just this boy out in the field that is not a soldier, is not a king, is not a nothing. He comes walking up and he's like, oh, I was just bringing my my guys, my brother's some food, but here for lunch. But you know, like, you guys are scared of this guy? Like, yeah, sure. I'll go fight him. It's no problem. Right. And it's like, well, what gave him courage in that moment? And I think for me, what's increased my courage is it just like in David in that way, I think was his trust in God in that moment. And that's where, you know, I think for me is this the same exact way is like, as I've learned to trust God with, you know what, like, again, God, if like you're leading me here, or again, I trust that you'll provide. I trust that you'll take care of me. I trust that if this doesn't work out, that it will only be that rejection will be God's redirection, and there'll be something else. There'll be something new, right? Just because you close this door, maybe I do try it and it doesn't go the way, because that's the other thing. Sometimes people do it like blind optimism. What if everything works out? It's like, well, what if you get into it and it doesn't work out, but it leads to something that is amazing? Like maybe sometimes in that journey, you know, you might have to lose a lot of things, but then it changes who you are. It builds all this awareness and it builds this experience that when you step forward into your next position, right? I don't know anybody that actually has deep experience that doesn't have a pile of failures and setbacks and
Exactly.
everything else, right? Like when I think of somebody, I think about this. If I say this guy is one of the top captains that is for ships, right? He's one of the top captains that's ever, you know, driven a ship. You're gonna go, well, he's probably been through some storms. He's probably had to go through some of these things, right? Like if he has never gone through these other things, he wouldn't be one of those top captains, right? They've had to navigate some seas. They've had to get out of some tough situations. And I think the same exact way too, as well, is like, that's, you know, if we hold ourselves back from experiencing things because we think that they're gonna, you know, again, I might fail, or maybe it doesn't go my way, or all these other things. It's like, well, yeah, it might not, right? But also at the same time, that's happened to me so many times. You know, it's not how many times I go through the door and everything just goes perfect. You know,
Exactly.
You know? They don't, right? A lot of times I walk through the door and it's not like that. And that's the part too, as well, is like, okay, well, yeah, but it doesn't end there. And that's the thing I think we're fear of. It's like, this is going to be the end of it. It's like, no, maybe I can't go back through this door, but there's another door and there's another option. And you know what? Maybe it's a opportunity that wasn't what I all dreamed of, but it gets me back on my feet and it gets me back rolling again. And therefore it leads around to where again, I think the blessings are. And I know that in my journey, a lot's been that way too, as well. I mean, I hear that when I hear your story too, as well, right? It's like, okay, you know, again, I was doing all these things and then, okay, I took this step, right? And it's like, okay, well, along the way, it wasn't all sunshine and, you know, rainbows and everything wasn't perfect. She's like,
no, no, not at all. But, you know, I think that's the thing is like a lot of people, even for myself, when I had to open this, you know, I was afraid. I was afraid that I was going to fail. But on the other side of that failure and you know, I had a good support group, you know, saying like, okay, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But, and I know too, it's like, if it doesn't work, at least I tried. And I knew once I got it, I was like, oh, man, I feel at peace. Like, this is cool, you know, and I think that taking that chance, I mean, I agree with you. I think that the doors and, you know, there's always going to be a door for you to walk through. And you figure it out. And it's in coaching some of the kids and making decisions for the business and what's best for the kids. You know, if you're doing it with a good heart, you're going to get where you need to go. God's got your back. That's what I feel.
And I remember one time, business wise, I was sitting in this room with all these executives and we were trying to I was negotiating this business deal and all the things. And the guys were all sitting there and they were like, I don't know if you're allowed to sit in this room if you've not gone bankrupt before. And I started laughing because I was the only one in the room that hadn't gone bankrupt before. So I'm like laughing. I'm like, oh, well, you know, like that's something for, you know, again, but these guys were all very successful and they've done all these things. And they were kind of saying the same thing, like, hey, you know, it's so much awareness for people to understand, even business wise. Usually it's not your first or second business or third business, right? That really works out and flourishes. Sometimes it's your fourth or fifth business that a lot of these business guys, you see them having this really successful business, but that's something, you know, again, that might've been 3 businesses might've gone bankrupt. They might've closed the doors. They might've done all these other things. And I think that's one of the things too, as well, is like not understanding that, right? Is is we only see the success, but you also got to remember, like, there's massive brands like Blockbuster, or some of the things that we grew up on, that even them, when they were major successes, right? But then times change, things, circumstance changes, technology advances, all these other things, and there's always different routes. And I think the same exact thing too, as well, is like, I've learned so much from how I've tried to run things or different seasons of the business. And the same thing as coaches, right? Like, there's gonna be those down spells. There's gonna be years where, maybe again, your teams aren't playing very well. And also too, man, I've grown so much in those ways. I feel like now, in this year, I feel like there's so many things from over the years that even, yes, the X's and O's and everything we learn, from that side is so important. But also too, I think there was so much things within me of, as I grew, again, my players grow. And if I want my players to grow, right, this building is capped at how much I grow, right? Like, I got to keep growing so that there's room for everything around us to grow. The business is only to grow as much as I grow. And the same thing with our players, right? And I think that's also the other part too, as well, is I try to prioritize growing and going to events like this and all these other things, because I know that ultimately, like, I'm the thing that's holding everything back, but also, you know what? I might have really helped getting it here, right? And I think I was going to bring that question for you too, as well, with that, right? Is just going, when I know also too, one of the things that you've done, because look, when you were leaving, we were packing up the car. We had products all up in the thing. We were in that thing. We were getting that thing. So it's not just on the education piece and some of those other things, but like, trying new things and using different tools and all these things. Because if you're a baseball guy and you're listening right now too, as well, you got to understand, in softball, you're really too pushing the space in those areas, because again, what softball is kind of already doing, and there's tradition there too, as well. But again, these are some of the things that are might be seem pretty normal in baseball, are going to be pushing softball in a lot of areas. And then on top of that, we're doing things that are pushing baseball, and then you're doing them in softball. So it's like, so that's how they're really like progressive on some of those things too. So like, explain that to me. What has been, kind of that, even just like opening up and just like using new tools and trying new things, what has been your mindset on some of that stuff too?
I'm not afraid to. I mean, I've got a whole office full of different tools. Every kid's different, and that's the thing, is what makes sense to one might not make sense to another. And so I think that's the big thing. I know when I was with you guys, I mean, the weighted balls are way better than carrying around basketballs. That's what we hit, right?
That helps. Yeah,
the plyo balls weren't around. So, we'd hit basketballs, flatten them a little bit, hit a tire, can't carry that around, and so some of those tools, the biggest thing for me, I think, is just the water bags. I think moving the water weight, and it's not heavy, but it's just, they just have to learn. I deal with a lot of the kids between, I've got, my youngest is, I think, like 7. And so it's like just simple things, and it's not difficult, but it's just them learning their body. And so taking some of those tools, knowing that some of those things I can use with my little ones, and some of those tools are great for the older ones too. So
I love that. And then, what I think, the other piece, like you were just mentioning right there too, as well, is like, another thing that was different about the retreats is your guys' retreat was very interested in the products and what, how to use them, how to do the thing. So we set time apart. I set time to the side. I'm like, hey, on the last retreat, we didn't do this, but I set all this time apart and going like, hey, let's go through. What do you guys have questions on? You guys want to talk about the water bags? Okay, great. Let's do that. Okay, you guys want to do performance bands? You guys want to go deep on that? Like, okay, like here's all these different setups. These are different ways that we can utilize this or do that.
And all the tools are great. I just know for me with the kids, it's like learning something extra moving with me, and so, and they all make sense. And it's like, well, that makes sense. That's the feeling I want them to gain from doing this activity. Let's go after it.
Yeah, no, that was really cool too. So what would you say too? A lot of those coaches, this community that we keep talking about, these coaches that want that breakthrough, maybe they're getting started, and sometimes I kind of throw them, there's a lot of overlap between those communities. You got going and you stop. So now you're getting going again, or you're getting going, right? And so you're kind of in that space. What have you felt like when you were if you could kind of put yourself back there, right? Where, a setback and you're starting to get going again, or when you were first started to coach and you started to get going, what advice would you give yourself back then, knowing what you know now?
Dive in, just go. I think like you said, what holds us back oftentimes is just kind of in our own mind, the fear of doing things. And I think that if I would have, obviously 25 years ago, they didn't have all of this. And if they did, I didn't know about it,
For sure.
and now it's just like, wow, like, if I would have had this when I was 25 years ago, how cool would this have been? And I would say dive in. And I know fear is a thing, but you'll figure it out, and even though you're thinking about what's on the other side of fear, and then you're like, okay, let me prepare for that, for the failure. And it's like, you can't, you just got to go through it, and you'll figure it out as you go. And it's not easy, but it's, once again, if I 20 years ago, I had dads that were like, open up your place. I can't. I'm too afraid. I was afraid to do it. And, one, the responsibility. Two, what do you mean I own my own business? I'm like, no way. And now I think back and I'm like, they were right. Like, why didn't I just go in? And so I say, jump in and try it and figure it out. And as you go, you'll figure things out. Things will work out the way they're meant to be.
Yeah. Love that. No, and I was also just thinking about too as well, like through all that, I know when I started getting, I was talking to these coaches at ABCA. They'll come up to me, some of the younger coaches, and they're like, dude, like, they want to learn all these things. They're like, here's all my constraints. Here's all these other things. And I started telling them, it's just like the same thing. It's like, hey, like a lot can happen in 2 years, right? Like I went from an assistant high school baseball coach, driving Ubers, waking up at 4 a.m, driving people to the airport, driving until 12 o'clock in the afternoon, leaving from there, going straight to practice, getting done with practice. By the time you got after practice meetings and you're talking to everybody, we clean everything up, all the stuff. I'm getting home at 10 o'clock. Sometimes I would either go drive again, or I'm working on the business I now have, right? With the farm, and we were doing podcasts, and I had two $15 mics. We're doing the podcast. We got these to do little $15 mics. This is how we started, right? Where 2 years later, I was interviewing for hitting coordinator jobs with the big leagues, right? And it's like a lot can happen in that stage, but also too, the difference between where I was at and also too, I think a lot of these coaches, right? It's like the idea here is like, if you can bottle it down of things that are pretty simple, right? Is one of the biggest reasons that where you want to go, the coaches you look up to, your Patrick Murphys, or your, like whatever, like if you want to, look at your those coaches at the top 0.5% of coaches in the world. It's like, well, what's the difference between them and you? A lot of it is experience, being through, they've learned a lot, they think differently, they have information, and they continue again. Like for example, like Murph, Murph goes to the ABCA. He goes to the baseball stuff too, on top of some of the softball stuff too, as well, on top of that, right? So it's just like, it's not, and again, it's not to say that one commonality you can see between a lot of these coaches is like, they just, again, that growth and how much they've learned and how much they've experienced. And I think that's the biggest thing too, from me, from back then too, as well, as the difference between me when I first started the business almost 10 years ago, to now, is the experience, right? Actually going through things. And then two, what I now know that I didn't know back then. Right. And I think that those are very important pieces. And like you said, getting to one, doing the things you're afraid of. Two, on the other side of that, going to events and learning from like other people, and being mentored, or, all those things, right? Maybe getting around other people that have been in the areas or places that you want to go. And then also too, like I said, also the consumption, obviously, of a lot more information when it comes into, like I said, books. And I mean, I got a library in the house, Don. I'll be out there reading. But I think that those are, big pieces that I think can really help those coaches in those ways. But before I let you go, I gotta get you for one more question. Is what do you think to when it comes into how what you took away, like when you came to the retreat, man, it was great. You had the experience. Yeah, other than all the toys you took with you, Don, right? what was your biggest takeaway? You know, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be, you know, again, like the biomechanics or something, like, you know, like maybe it's how you just saw player development, or maybe it's how you you know, how your lens as a coach. You know, what was your biggest takeaway that you think that you pulled away from the event, you know, holistically when you look back?
The whole thing for me, I mean, from the networking, knowing that, you know, the struggles that I had, it wasn't kind of like where I felt stuck. I wasn't the only one feeling like that, you know, or there to, you know, learn more, gain more knowledge, be able to take it back to give clarity to the athletes. It wasn't just me, it was everybody else, obviously, you know, in that situation. It was, I know that first, and it's been an ongoing thing, but I know coming in just with the energy and that first week, and the kids were like, you know, they were just like, ah. And I'm like, right? I mean, even for me, like, it makes sense. And it's like, it's that simple, but yet we made it seem that difficult, you know? And so, you know, I'm really thankful, and I'm really glad that I took the opportunity to go, because it was something that I had seen. I know I had missed out on the first one. Yeah. And because I'm like, oh, what a bummer. And then after I was like, okay, well, and then when the second one came around, I'm like, I'm in. Like, you know, I'm going. And it was a great experience overall, everything. I mean, from the knowledge of sitting in the classroom and hearing, you know, you took the class and broke it down for us, you know, and so that was great. And then being able to see how all the tools work, and then just meeting everybody, the networking was a really cool experience too. And, you know, I even asked Taylor, I think after, I'm like, well, when's the part 2 happening?
Yeah, no, and that's where I think also too, what like you talked about is I said that recently when we were making, I was telling you how we had a new foundations course that we're building, and one of the I guess videos, or when I was breaking down something, I was talking about how with biomechanics and some of these subjects, right? Let's say I go to a physics class in college, they're not telling me how this applies to hitters and exactly. Right? When I go take a biomechanics class, it's not like only about baseball and let me tell you all the details, and this biomechanist is going to tell me how to train my hitters. It's like, no, like they only know what that graph looks like. They only know this is what the forces do. That's way different than actually coaching. That knowledge is super helpful. And that's where I was saying, you know, when we made the curriculum, it was like, hey, this isn't a 100 level course. What this is, you know, taking all this information and going, hey, here are the things that I think help you the most. And here are the things that I feel like if you knew this would change how you saw things, or how you trained, or you know, how you
communicate it to the athlete. For sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
For sure.
And it connects why we would even do that drill, right? Because if you don't understand all of those other things, then that drill just might look like some crazy thing. Like, why are you doing that? What does that actually do for them? And it's like, oh, when you actually know what's going on under the hood, oh, okay, that makes more sense. I understand the body a little bit more.
Exactly. That's the part where, you know, I think is huge, because if you can know the why, you can figure out the how, you know. And
the other part, I know you grew up through this era too, right? Where when players couldn't do something we were asking them to do, it was like, or, you know, again, when I couldn't do something my coach didn't ask me to do, like, you don't know how to compete, you don't know how to fight through these things. Like,
it was like a list of things.
Yeah, I'm like, Coach, I literally have a physical limitation in my pelvis, and like I literally can't do that. And there's like, you know, like when I get wide, it just doesn't work for me, or like other things, and here's why. And so like, yeah, I think that way too, it also opens up some lines of communication between you and your player. And it's like, they're not disrespecting you. Like they might just literally not be able to do, you know, some of those things. And it helps you, I think, in a lot of ways too. Like you said, you know, all these players are different. If you worked with enough players, you know that there's all these differences. But if you can kind of see that and also help them with some of those things, you know, obviously that becomes really big. You don't need to walk out of the retreat being an anatomy expert or a biomechanics expert, but if it can open and broaden how you view, you know, training, or how the lens at which you see developing a player, and also the grace and all those other things you can have for them. I think that, that alone, the relationship between you and the athlete's going to be dramatically better.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that, and these, a lot of times and I know when I was younger, it was like, this is where you need to get it. This, I need it to look like this. I need it to look like this. And over the years it's changed, and it's been awesome to be able to say, okay, this is what we want it to look like. You may not be able to get there, but this is how we're going to change it a little bit to fit you. So
no, love that. Yeah. But anyways, Dawn, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and also sharing your story and helping. I know that those people that pulled away. And again, if anything, just some encouragement. I know it's encouraging for me to hear people go, man, okay, there is something on. Maybe I'm in the middle of it right now and I'm doing this bigger transition, and hearing other people that have gone through some of those, bigger transitions in their life, or also too, just some encouragement that like, man, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can take those other steps. Cause that was one of the things I brought up previously with Doug the other day when we were talking. Was I know that there's a lot of coaches that might look at something like a retreat and go, well, that's awesome. I love that. I love that, people that are doing that. And that seems like such a cool thing, but maybe it's not for me. That's for those people. That's for these people that are in these other places. And I know in a large span, I wanted them to also hear from you too, as well. And saying like, no, this is how I'm utilizing. This is what I'm doing with it, and this is how I viewed it too as well. Cause I know that that's a self-limiting belief, right? I used to do the same thing, right? It's like, oh, well, yeah, they can do that, but I can't do that. And it's like, well, no, there is ways, there is, in your environment, how it can be super helpful too. And anyways, I want them to hear from you.
I think it's stepping outside of your comfortable, you being uncomfortable and saying, I know for myself, I don't know everything. I want to see what I can go, because it's not about me. It's what I can bring back for my athletes and what they need. And maybe the verbiage, I might be trying to say something 3 different ways and they can't figure it out. And now I just bring a tool and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that was easy.
For sure. 100%. Yeah. And also too, it's the same way for learning for me, right? Like a lot of people forget that part, right? It's like the first time I heard a biomechanist talk about something, it wasn't like I was like, got it. Oh, beautiful. I never need to learn it. Like, it's like, no. Some of those things I was saying that the other day when I was making a video, I'm like, I had to read that same page on that book probably 15 times. Cause I'm like, what are they trying to say right here? Like, I don't understand. So, and I think I sent that in our group chat one time with the group where I was talking about, it's like, sometimes we think just because we don't get something immediately that we'll never understand something, right? And I know a lot of people are turned off by some of that stuff with like the data, or again, some of the science or some of these things too. It's like, oh, well, the first time I heard it, I heard about it, or I saw it through social media and I saw a certain clip, or I saw, this 30-second clip, and I'm supposed to understand biomechanics in 30 seconds, right? It's this intimidation that I'll never understand it. Where in reality, it's like, no. Like, I know more about those subjects now, but I know biomechanics, check. It's like, no. Yeah. It's like, I know more, right? I know more biomechanics now than I did 5 years ago. And I'll tell you the same thing too, as well. The biomechanist that I work with all the time, I have like 5 or 6 of them that I consistently interact with. The same thing. They're like, dude, what I knew 5 years ago, I know way more about biomechanics now. So it's not like they're not doing the same thing either. They're not going biomechanics, check. No. Everything is on a spectrum, and there's so much learning you can keep doing in all of these areas. If it's recruiting, if it's training, if it's psychology, if it's, again, anatomy, right? There's so much more in every layer that you can dive deeper into.
Yeah. And that's why I think in the networking, it's like with people watching this, it's dive in, and I know it's scary, but there's good stuff at the end, and it's, going into the data side of it too. For me, I'm like, what? How do I do that? How do I translate it? And it's like, the only way for me to know is to dive in and get it so that the kids understand. And then they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
And from the first group that also ended up being in your guys, is because the first group requested it, is when we went through biomechanics, they really wanted to go through force plate data. right?
Mhm.
So then we pull up force plate data and I'm like, hey, this is what is happening when you see your player jumping like out of the backside. These are the forces that are happening. Like this is what torque actually is. This is what creates rotation. And right, this is what the force plate is reading. That's why we do these things. And you're like, oh, like that connects a lot of dots. That's why it's important for hitting, or this is why we use these tools.
Like what you guys were saying with the lunging, and it
Yeah.
tends to be like the middle infielders tend to
Yeah.
do that because of the way that they move. And it's like, so true. Like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, you start to see these patterns happen all the time. You start looking around and you go, why am I always training catchers and middle like some of these same positions all the time? And then they always generally have a lot of the similar issues. Or, again, if you keep getting right-handed throwers that hit left-handed and you start seeing, okay, there's these things these commonalities I start to see too. Like, oh, okay, interesting. So you start to build all these asymmetries and all these things, and you just get better at helping them and serving them and that's what I think is important too as well, right? It's like, we keep seeing ourselves as servants. I go and learn all these things. I go deep into the weeds so that I can make it easy for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing like I try to do for you guys, right? It's like I try to go really deep and then I come back and make it like, hey, here's
The
what
frosting.
I learned.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, this is what I pulled away. I'm your spark notes here, right? Let me go in and go these deep dives into the sciences and bring out what I feel like is super, helpful and what I've learned from those things too as well. So yeah, no, Dawn, I appreciate it. Our conversations are always great. And I know that, you
Yes.
helped a lot of people and dove into it as well with the event. But yeah, anytime you want to come back, you know what I'm saying, Dawn, we're here. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
We're always here.
Sounds good.
And you can come by. But no, yeah, I appreciate it. And if anybody wants to get in contact with you that's in the area or any of the things, and also come and, feed the business, all the things, right? How can they get in contact with you? What would you say for them there?
My phone number's, you want my phone number?
Oh,
or you
no,
want-
don't give, listen, don't. No, don't be
The
giving out
business phone
on
number,
the
not my
live.
personal number, not my personal number, the business number.
Okay, business number. We're good. Yeah,
Business number is 909-310-1395. Teach to Hit is my business name.
Awesome.
And that
Awesome.
was given to me by my very first lesson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting story there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
There's a story to everything that it's, everybody who's come into my life has shaped and molded me. I don't claim to know everything. I learn from them just as much as they learn from me. So
Yeah. No, love it. Love it. Well, I appreciate it again. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you soon. And I got to get you on the part 2 of the retreat, like you said, right? Well, we'll get there at some point.
I'm in.
All right, Dawn. Thank you so much.
All right.